I have here two very simple examples to show how to map SSIS variables in and out of SQL code using Execute SQL Task. One example uses OLEDB and the other one uses ADO.NET. Both examples do exactly the same thing and they use 4 variables. I have the variables created already. There's a couple of variables to use as input parameters to the SQL code, and there's a couple of variables to use as output parameters to the SQL code. Of each pair, one's a number, one's a string. For the outputs, one's a number, one's a string. I'll just close the variable window. If we just disable the ADO.NET example, just to stop that being part of the story for the time being, and we'll concentrate on the OLEDB example. So let's open it up. Connection type OLEDB, as we say, and here's a SQL statement. Just open that up, and I think what I'll do is I'll take a copy of it and paste it into a notepad just so we can see a bit more clearly what's going on. The question marks, they're just placeholders for the variable mappings. So this would be the output number equals 2 times the input number, and this one will be the output string equals some piece of fixed text with the input string concatenated at the end. And just push the notepad out of the way, and we can OK this. Next thing to look at is the parameter mapping, which I've already done. There's 4 variables mapped out here. I'll just spread it out a bit so we can see what's going on. There's a bit of a pain. There you go, nearly there. There you go. So then, it'd be helpful, I think, if we look at the SQL text at the same time. Bring the notepad back. So what we can see here is that the parameter names are numbered 0, 1, 2, 3. This is OLEDB, remember, and parameter mappings use numbers. So the 0 represents the first question mark in the SQL text, and the 1, the second question mark in the SQL text, and so on. So what we can see here is that this should be 0 for the output number, and this should be 1 for the input number, and 2 for the output string, and 3 for the input string. So the mappings look okay. That's fine. Not forgetting to give the directions. There's output and input. Parameter sizing, you can just leave that as a default of -1 most of the time, even for strings. Okay, so I'll just move this notepad out of the way, and we can OK this, and it should be ready for a test. So to test it, first thing we want to do is just add a breakpoint on post-execute event. This is just so we can hold it long enough to have a look at the variables to see that they've changed the way we want them to change. So OK that, and give it a run. So it's held on the breakpoint. The watch window has come up, but there's nothing to see in it. You just bring up the variables and highlight them all, and then we can drag them into our watch window so we can see what they look like. So the input number of 5 has been doubled into 10, which is what we expected, and the input number, the input string is red, and that ended up concatenated to the end of our fixed text. So that looks good. Let's complete the run and stop the debugging. And we can remove that breakpoint, and then we'll disable the OLEDB example and enable the ADO.NET example, ready to look at next. Open up this and let's have a look at it. So connection type ADO.NET, the SQL statement this time looks like this. And again, I'll just take a copy of it, bring in a notepad, paste it into here so you can see it a bit more clearly. This time we don't have question marks as placeholders. This time it's a bit clearer than OLEDB. We've got actual variable names, which is a lot nicer really. So again, just the same logic. We're setting the output number to twice the input number, and we're putting the input string at the end of the output string. Okay, just move the notepad out of the way, and OK to that. And we look at the parameter mapping. Again, we've got the small pane of just spreading it out a bit so we can see what's going on. Just a moment. Just so you can see the column names. Okay. This time, instead of parameter names going 0, 1, 2 and relying on the positions of the question marks in the SQL text, we've got actual parameter names, which can be the same or can be different to the variable names. And if I just bring back the SQL text to remind ourselves, here are the parameter names and here are the parameter names. So it's a whole lot clearer and easier to maintain than OLEDB. ADO.NET is better in that way. So just move that out of the way. And OK to this, and we're ready to test it. Again, we'll just put a breakpoint in it, the onPost execute breakpoint, to hold it so we can have a look at the variables. And then we'll give it a run. We've already have our watch set up from the previous example, so we can see straight away that 5 is doubled into 10 and red is concatenated to the end of our fixed text. So test looks okay. Continue the run and stop the debugger. Might be useful just to finish by looking at a chart of the connection types. The first example was OLEDB, and as we saw we had question marks within the SQL and the parameter names went 0, 1, 2. The example we've just looked at for ADO.NET is a bit different. We have actual named variables within the SQL and within the parameter mappings, which makes it a whole lot clearer. I might just add the special case for ADO.NET if you're going to be calling stored procedures. We can look at that in a later video. Okay, thank you for watching.